All right. Hello, everyone. So, to begin, I want you all to visualize a Muslim. Think about their face, their clothing, and their personal beliefs. Now, look at me. Am I what you envisioned? My name is Meliha. My name is an Arabic name, a very old Bedouin name, meaning beautiful. Although my name is Arabic and I was raised in Idaho, I was actually born in Germany to Bosnian Muslim refugees. The plurality of these cultural influences in my life has created unique areas of interest, and one of these interests is learning languages. I know English and Bosnian fluently, and from a young age I started learning Arabic. But on my voyage for language acquisition, I actually found myself in Amman, Jordan last summer. However, prior to accepting the scholarship to study, several of my friends and family members urged me to think critically about my decision to go abroad. They were concerned about my safety as an American girl. And the Middle East has been publicized as an unsafe region for several years now. However, I know a lot about Islam, and I know a lot about Quranic history as well. I was optimistic about my future experiences in Jordan. I'm Muslim, and most of the people that I would be meeting were Muslim also. Certainly, I would have an upper hand over my fellow travelers. Certainly, I would be able to better empathize and understand this new culture. So, I decided to accept my scholarship to study through the National Language Initiative for Youth, commonly known as NISLI, in Amman. After I had landed in Amman, we had an orientation, and my program coordinator discussed several necessary safety topics. These include culture shock, sexual harassment, and taxi etiquette. So from that orientation and subsequent taxi rides, I clearly remember the significance of the taximeter. It was imperative that the taxi driver turn on the meter as soon as we entered the car, lest they abuse our foreign naivety and overcharge us. On my first ride, I forgot to ask about the meter, and the driver charged me 3 dinar for a 1 dinar ride, which is about 1.5 USD. I paid him, but I was a little bitter about the situation. I had been taken advantage of. And so if I fast forward to my last week in Amman, I had grown comfortable with the language and the culture, and I didn't really fear confrontation with taxi drivers anymore. I wanted to see my friend one more time before I left for the US. So I left and I went outside into the streets. The traffic was atrocious, but after about 30 minutes, a taxi finally pulled up. As I entered, I did the standard protocol. I asked him about the taxi meter immediately, and he didn't respond, and he didn't turn it on. I wasn't sure if he had heard me or not, so I repeated the question again. Can you please turn on your meter? This time, he looked at me through his rearview mirror, but still didn't do anything. At this point, I was getting a little anxious and started to doubt my pronunciation. He was preoccupied with traffic, but I felt the need to clarify myself once more. Please turn on the meter, sir, I said again in Arabic. This time, he looked at me and he was a little irritated and he said, "Why are you asking about the meter? I'm trying to make sure we get into traffic safely." I was a little shocked and I started to explain myself, but he interrupted and he's like, "Not all taxi drivers are thieves." I apologized. I was surprised by my own reaction, but then he interrupted me again and said, "Don't apologize. Just know that I'm giving you this ride from the goodness of my heart." So that caused me to sit in silence and reflection for the rest of this taxi ride. I was really disappointed in myself, in my own reaction to the situation. I thought that I had the capacity to understand and to empathize with this new culture. I thought that my knowledge and faith as a Muslim would help me with this empathy and this understanding. But I had completely succumbed to these self-defensive behaviors that were unproductive, and I misjudged the situation. It was an incredible wake-up call. The taxi driver taught me that although we shared a similar religion, we definitely did not share similar cultures. Islam is very important to the Middle East, but having knowledge of religion is not enough to understand and navigate a new culture confidently. I understand Islam in its Bosnian context, but I had never had prolonged interaction with a Middle Eastern, and more specifically, Jordanian Muslim before. The taxi driver also taught me that I need to examine my misconceptions and assumptions about different groups of people. I had been so focused and so sure of my compassion and empathy towards Muslims that I unknowingly discriminated against another group, taxi drivers. In this way, the self-defensive behavior was very unproductive, and I found that my naivety and my self-defensive behavior is a product that characterizes many empathetic and open-minded people. I've shared this experience with you to demonstrate the rather unappealing and inappropriate behavior even I, as a Muslim and someone with a lot of cultural background, has demonstrated. It's really easy to succumb to self-defense behavior abroad. You're in an uncomfortable situation, everything's new, but it's also pretty easy to come across here at home amongst our peers and citizens. And so this actually leads me into another story, and it's drastically different from my taxi driver story. It has to do with an Islamic artist, and I had the ability to talk to her one day after class. She was explaining the basic premises of Islamic art, which, among geometric patterns and shapes and repeating colors and unique mediums, is focused on a hadith by Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And a hadith is a word, action, or phrase that Prophet Muhammad said or did. And this particular hadith, which is Anna Allahu Jamilatan Yajbul Ajmal, means, indeed, Allah is beautiful and He loves beauty. And as she was explaining that this is a major premise of Islamic art, she turned to me and she said, "Yes, Meliha, even your name, it means beautiful, and all of Allah's creations are beautiful." Her words really resonated with me and stuck with me because I understood her. I respected her, and despite our cultural and geographic and physical differences, I felt that I could really empathize with her. And this situation is especially significant to me in my experience of Jordan because it really humanized Jordanian people and Muslims. Although I had learned to respect Jordanian culture long before I had left, this situation really clarified the difference between respect and empathy. As I stood there watching her, and I understood her hopes and her dreams and her ideas, I realized it wasn't because of this religious bond we shared, but rather because I truly decided to listen to her and understand her. And the more I listened to her, the more she reminded me of my friends back home. These two experiences are some of the many that have shaped my experience in Jordan and forced me to address some of my own self-defensive and otherwise inconsiderate behaviors that I unknowingly used. And so, just a quick hand raise. How many of you think of yourselves as open-minded, as empathetic people? I know I do. Yeah. So, before I set foot in Jordan, I had a certain naivety that characterizes a lot of empathetic and open-minded people. But that's why I think it's especially important to address these self-defensive behaviors, because they affect the open and closed-minded alike. I would like to share a quote with you today, and it's from John Knoll's book, A Separate Peace. "All of them constructed, at infinite cost to themselves, these Maginot lines across the frontier, for this enemy they thought they saw, if he ever attacked that way, if he was indeed the enemy." Many Westerners are afraid of Middle Eastern cultures, beliefs, and ideas. They fear Syrian refugees and perpetuate discrimination against them out of self-defense, out of this perceived threat. And although we may perceive ourselves to be open-minded and different from them, applying theoretical ideals to real life is really difficult. Equality, fairness, and open-mindedness don't transfer very easily. Even so, I think we should continue to try to be open-minded and understanding, because I don't want to avoid the Middle East out of fear. I don't believe in that enemy across the frontier, and I don't want to build Maginot Lines or walls. I want to embrace the beauty in the Middle East, and I want to promote negative stereotypes against Muslims and really create engagement between Middle Eastern and Western citizens. However, I will admit that mistakes will be made, and it is in these mistakes that we must grow and reflect together. So as we pursue our own interests and discover new perspectives and explore our true passions and dreams, we must remember to analyze and examine our own defensive behaviors. It's time to stop calling out our Syrian, Middle Eastern, Jordanian, and Muslim neighbors. It's time to stop calling each other out in the name of righteousness. Instead, let's start calling each other in, to discussions, to spaces, and into our America. Thank you.